In a survey of over 20,000 women whose marriages scored in the top 20% for marital satisfaction were 4 times more likely to orgasm reliably than women whose marriages scored in the bottom 20%. So maybe you need a reminder today. Sex isn't just physical, which is why for most men, there is nothing worse than feeling like their wife does not want to be there and is not interested when they are having sex. And for women, there's probably nothing worse than a wife feeling like her husband is interested in the body more than he is the person inside the body. Like he doesn't actually want them, he really wants sex. So if you're going to have a healthy sex life in your marriage, you probably need to get to know your spouse. Here's what I mean. Let me drop a little Bible in here too. Genesis 4:1 says, "And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord." Now I had to go a little King James version on you there because most of the other versions, like the NIV and the NASB, have changed that word know into made love to, had sexual relations with. And that is what the word know in that context is talking about. But this Hebrew word, yada, is used throughout the Old Testament, and it means to know. And in different contexts, it means different things. So we see over in Psalm 139, when David says, "Search my heart," or "You have searched me, Lord, and you know me." It speaks of that covenantal relationship they had. And in Genesis 18:19, when God, speaking of Abraham, says, "I have chosen him," it's that same word, to know, that he knew Abraham. So what we see with this word know is it speaks about the covenantal relationship that they had. In Genesis 4:1, obviously it was a covenant between man and woman. Genesis 18, over in Psalm 139, it's speaking of the covenant relationship God had with both David and Abraham. But here's what you need to understand. That this knowing, this sexual knowing of one another, was not purely physical. It was speaking about the covenantal marriage that Adam and Eve had, which means that there was a faithfulness to that covenant across the whole marriage, to how they support each other, to how they comfort one another, to how they serve one another, to how they mutually submit to one another. So in this relationship, it was far more than Adam just had sex with Eve physically. It was a covenantal knowing of one another. Why am I telling you all this? Because you will not have intimate sex in your relationship if you do not understand it is more than just physical. You will not have good intimacy in your relationship if your spouse does not feel known. So you know me well enough if you've seen any of the videos on this, and if you didn't, and this is your first one, welcome. Now you're about to get to know me. I don't want to just stick on the spiritual or the theoretical. I want to get practical. So what does it practically look like? How can I better show that I know my spouse in my marriage, which according to that survey I started out with, will increase the fun of sex, increase the likelihood of orgasm for the women, will increase the likelihood that both husband and wife are actually enjoying a fulfilling sex life together. How do you actually know somebody or show that they were known? Let me give you 3 quick thoughts about that. Number 1 is they know that you value them. They know that you like who they are as a person, not just for what they can bring to the table, but who they are as a person. So if you are consistently criticizing, if you're consistently correcting your spouse, they're not going to feel like you value them. If you are consistently letting them know that they are falling short or not measuring up to the expectations you have in whatever area of the relationship you're talking about, they are not going to feel like they are valued in the relationship. If they consistently feel like you're trying to change who they are not going to feel valued in the relationship. So how can you make sure that they know that you accept them just as they are, that you love and care for them as they are, that you value who they are and who they bring to the marriage? The more that you do that, your spouse will feel like you truly know them. Know that you value them. That's what they're looking for. Number 2 is they know that you see them as an equal. It's called mutuality. Now I know a lot of people love to go to Ephesians 5:22, wives submit to your husbands as to the Lord, while skipping the fact that the very first verse in front of that, Ephesians 5:21 says submit one to another. So whatever your biblical position is on the hierarchy of Christ is the head of man, man is the head of woman, and how that practically looks walked out in the relationship, here's what you need to know that research is also showing. Dr. John Gottman, who is one of the most well-known psychologists and researchers of relationship, has found that when a man refuses to share power in the relationship with a wife, there's an 81% chance that that marriage is going to go up in flames and will not last. Other research has shown that when women do not feel like their opinions are valued or heard, they are 26 times more likely for that relationship to end in divorce. But here's the good news. When wives feel like they're in a shared marriage where there is shared power, where their husbands value their ideas and their opinions, and there's not this power imbalance, they are 4 times more likely to rank their marital satisfaction in the top 20% of marriages than they are in the bottom 20%, and 67 times more likely to report that they frequently orgasm during sex, because guess what? Sex is not just physical. They need to know that you see them as an equal in the relationship. And the third practical way that your spouse can feel known by you is that they know that you want them. Not that you just want sex, not that you want orgasm, not that you just want to use them to take care of your sexual needs, but they actually feel like you desire them in the relationship. Right? That's why they're on either end of the spectrum, right? Whether a wife feels like the man is just objectifying her body to take care of his sexual needs, or whether the man maybe feels like the wife is just showing up for some duty sex but really doesn't want to be there. Either one of those are not going to make the other person feel like their spouse truly wants them in the relationship. And if they don't feel like they're wanted in the relationship, it's going to be a lot harder to show up in the area of their sexual intimacy, and it's going to most likely prevent them from having a fulfilling sexual life. So if you want your spouse to want to show up in the bedroom and have the kind of relationship that you want in there, they have to feel known. So what you need to ask yourself is, now that I've been reminded that sex is not purely physical, what am I doing on a regular basis to connect with my spouse emotionally? What does that look like? What are we doing? What does it look like to show up and connect with my spouse spiritually? And what are we doing on a regular basis to show up in these areas? Because if we show up emotionally and if we show up spiritually outside of the bedroom, what's going to happen is we're going to show up way better physically inside of the bedroom. If you need some help having conversations about that and you haven't grabbed our free guide to intimacy, you'll see a link in the description area below. That will just help you evaluate your emotional, your spiritual, your recreational, and your physical intimacy, and come up with a game plan for what can we begin doing today that will make us feel more connected together. So at the end of the day, what I need you to walk away with from this video is, if your spouse does not feel known, your sexual relationship will suffer. I'll tag a couple other videos at the end of this on sex as well. Hopefully that's helped you a little bit, and until next time, we'll see you right back here on RelationShots.